What I mean by criticisms is when there are examples of things gone too far, when certain groups end up silenced under the name of DEI, like for example, the argument that, or under wokeness or intersectionality, like for example, the argument that Jewish women aren't intersectional and discriminated against enough to qualify to be in the leadership of the Women's March.
The inevitable failure of the progressive agenda is just such a unique spectacle to observe, because the admission of guilt has to be so disguised in such a way to absolve them from any wrongdoing. Because when your catchphrase is, we're on the right side of history, you can't exactly admit to being wrong all the time. It's always lightly sprinkled in. It's not like they print out a retraction. It's not like they make a video, hey, I was wrong about everything. They usually do it slowly, pathologically, roll out this information to the point where it's just, oh, that's just something fringe people said, or that's just something fringe people are concerned with. It's a fringe idea that fringe people are dealing with. We've got the failed YouTube commentator David Panderman trying to slip his way out of this DEI, the abysmal that has been defund the police. Hit like, hit sub, leave a comment for the commies. Help me fight these commies with a comment. I mean, look at the name of the video. When does DEI go too far? When the left eats themselves, that's when. He knows they've got trouble. When mom and dad are fighting, guys, we've got big problems at home here. Let's watch how the master, David Panderman, slips and slimes his way out of this. This is a masterclass. A masterclass in deception is what I'm trying to say. This is a masterclass in deception. He may work for the CIA.
Qualify to be in the leadership of the Women's March. That's a specific example of you've perverted the stated objectives of why you exist. So my point is not I have general criticisms. It's sometimes any movement that is rooted in logical and sensible objectives gets taken too far by the extremists.
Extremists, you say? That's interesting. Rooted in logic. He's always trying to speak highly about himself in the third person as though he's not referring to himself. Taken too far by extremists. Well, what would you say an extremist is, Mr. David Pladman?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Let's check out a little extremist behavior, in my opinion. IMO. This is Mr. David Pladman and his interview with Trigonometry. And they ask him a very simple question. Should anyone with a penis be in a woman's prison? Obviously, David doesn't know. He has no fucking clue. He never has any idea about anything. But they ask him a simple question. Should people with penises be in women's prisons? And let's just watch David's non-extreme take on this.
Well, but not everybody who's a trans woman has a penis.
But these people did, and they were in female prisons, both in your country and in ours.
I just don't know the case. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Should a person with a penis, though, be in a female prison?
I would have to know more about how these decisions are being made. I don't know enough about how the decisions are made to be able to say.
What does that even mean? What the F does that even effing mean? No is the answer. They shouldn't be, David. That's the answer. So you don't even understand questions. Non-extremist Mr. David Panderman, just pandering along the interviews he does.
What is more like, I mean, like, listen, let's just be very upfront. If you have a trans woman that is biologically male and has a penis, but is slight in size and has a very feminine appearance, by all statistical likelihood, they are far less likely to assault someone in a women's prison than they are to be assaulted in a men's prison. And so that's a particular case where I would say it makes sense for them to be in a women's prison, yes.
Non-extremist, not taking it too far whatsoever. So David's talking to a black lady who called into the show, She loves David. She loves his books. David Panderman has 3 coloring books he released, or at least that's what they look like. They look like giant Goosebumps books that you may or may not color in. The point is that she's really a fan of David's, and he's of course going to cut her off and just start talking about himself and all his mistakes, but disguising this as like information. So let's check this out.
And I'm against that type of stuff.
The police thing is an interesting one where it's like the police thing is interesting. It's like we need police reform.
No, she wasn't talking. You're fine. You're fine, David. She just called into your show to talk to you and have a discourse with you, but just talk over and do whatever you want to talk about. It is your show, so I guess that makes sense. The white man holding the black people down as always, but they won't see it that way.
I know, I agree with you there.
Discrimination to fight discrimination. I'm against that type of stuff.
The police thing is an interesting one where it's like the police thing is interesting. It's like we need police reform. I've outlined 10 to 12 different ways in which I would reform and improve policing. If you just ask most people if you could get rid of the police in your city right now and have no police, would you do it? Almost everyone says no. And so at its core, the blanket defund the police thing, I think, went too far. It's we need to reform. We have problems. We need to talk about qualified immunity, all these different things. Defund and get rid of the police. No, almost nobody actually wants that. And Democrats don't want that.
That's interesting. No one wants that. That isn't what they meant when everyone said that. The ACLU, defunding the police will actually make us safer. This was, of course, a couple of years ago. This was in 2020. Obviously, if you're not retarded, you knew this was very stupid immediately. How stupid of an idea this was. But no, there's a lot of people. Check this out. This is a website right now. Defundthepolice.org. How is that possible? The time has come to defund the police. Here's Cori Bush. This was 1 year ago, but let's watch this.
And you've stuck by it. In fact, you're one of the few Democrats now who still says, let's defund the police. Are you worried at all that could hurt some of your colleagues going into the midterm elections?
See, the thing about defund the police is we have to tell the entire narrative. People hear defund the police, but you know what they'll say? Say reallocate, say divest, say move. But it's still the same thing. We can't get caught up on the words. People spend more time focusing on the word defund than they spend on caring and addressing the problem of.
When that's the point of your thesis, when that's your slogan, Christ's sakes. For Christ's sakes, your slogan is defund the police. Yeah, so people might be concentrated on that. No, people are saying, like, this is exactly what they mean. So David lightly admitted to that. And then Panderman glossed over that and said this is fringe. Well, it's not fringe.
The state of Washington has just enacted a dozen police reform laws following nearly a year of nationwide protest over police brutality. And according to one social justice group, more than $840 million were cut from U.S. police budgets. That was in 2020. The Seattle PD is struggling under the public backlash. The police chief there tells CBS News that 260 officers, that's about 20% of the force, have left in the past year and a half. Think about that for a second. Carter Evans spoke to one officer who says the city...
It's probably going great. You know, I wonder how things are going. Here, let's do another little fact check, right? David has mentioned numerous times how the crime's going down. Of course, I've debunked this in a separate video. Please go watch that. I'll link it to this one. I'll put it in the comments or something. Cities that call to defund police grappling with crime surge. No kidding. Washington. In wake of escalating violent crime, some cities across the nation that previously cut police funding are reconsidering their stance. And Pladman would like you to believe that crime in every liberal city is going down. Well, that just simply isn't true. It's not true in Chicago. It's not true in Washington, D.C. However, as crime has surged, city officials, including Mayor Merle Bowser, was not expecting that. He shoots fireballs at all the protesters that come there, and they have to jump over his head to slam on a gate to save the city council member. And members of the city council have advocated for increased police presence. Yes, of course, no kidding. One lie at a time, we are debunking Pladman, but he puts out so much stuff. He puts out about 26 videos a day on Trump. So it's really hard to stay on top of this guy. I mean, his boyfriend doesn't seem to think so, but it's hard for me to stay on top of this guy. All right. Jeremiah, what do we have next?